Now we're going to compute costs using the ABC approach, and we'll discuss why cost differences occur between traditional costing and ABC. Traditional costing uses one cost driver for all overhead, while ABC uses multiple cost drivers and captures differences in product complexity. Traditional costing may undercost complex products and overcost simple products. That leads to pricing mistakes, poor product mix decisions, and incorrect profitability analyses. Here are the main reasons cost differences occur. Traditional costing ignores product complexity. ABC captures differences in resource usage. Traditional costing may lead to inaccurate cost and profit reporting, while ABC provides clearer insight for pricing and profitability decisions. This is why ABC is especially useful in companies with diverse products. Let's recall the ABC window and glass example from the previous learning objective. In the example, there were $2 million of overhead. The first step in ABC is to allocate those overhead costs out to overhead cost pools based on the activities that the company performs when manufacturing or producing product. In this case, they have three activity cost pools: layering and laminating, molding, and cutting and sizing. And the overhead costs that are associated with the various activities are attributed to those three activities. And you can see the costs have been attributed $1.1 million to layering and laminating, $550,000 to molding, and $450,000 to cutting and sizing. The next step is to identify the cost driver for each activity cost pool. We've identified that machine hours drive the costs of layering and laminating. Machine hours also drive the costs of molding, but direct labor hours drive the costs of cutting and sizing. The next step is to identify the expected amount of cost driver consumption with each activity. You'll notice that auto glass is expected to consume 2,000 machine hours, while the production of structural glass is expected to produce 500 machine hours in the red highlighted box. Auto glass is expected to consume 2,500 labor hours, whereas structural glass is expected to consume 7,500 labor hours. We then use those values to apply overhead costs to each product for the various activities. So with layering and laminating, auto glass gets 2,000 divided by 2,500 hours worth of $1.1 million. Structural glass takes $1.1 million times the 500 machine hours divided by the 2,500 total machine hours for an allocation amount of $220,000. So you can see that auto glass is getting applied $880,000 worth of layering and laminating because it consumes a lot of machine hours, whereas structural glass is getting much less. Let's follow that same exercise when allocating the molding and cutting and sizing costs to auto glass and structural glass. Again, molding is driven by machine hours, so auto glass is getting much more of the molding cost, whereas cutting and sizing is driven by direct labor hours. And in that case, structural glass is getting much more of the overhead allocation. Now we tally the total overhead cost allocated to each product. In this case, $1,432,500 to auto glass, $667,500 to structural glass, and that's under the expectation that we're producing 5,000 units of auto glass and 10,000 units of structural glass, resulting in an overhead cost per unit of $286.50 for auto glass and $66.75 per structural glass. Now we can tally the total expected cost per unit of auto glass and a unit of structural glass. Direct material and direct labor are applied as we did with the traditional cost method. $150 of material to auto glass and $100 to structural glass. Labor, $12.50 is applied to auto glass and $18.75 to structural glass. Overhead is applied using the ABC approach that we just computed, $288.50 to auto glass and $66.75 per unit of structural glass, for a total cost per unit of $449 per unit of structural glass and $185.50 per unit of structural glass. Let's summarize overall cost and compare profitability if we set a pricing at a certain level using the two different approaches. Overhead allocation is more accurate, leading to better overall costs. Under the traditional costing, we show auto glass at $262.50 per pane, but ABC's detailed allocation raises it to $449. That's because product complexity is considered. Traditional costing ignores the complexity, while ABC accounts for specialized needs, leading to a higher cost. Let's assume we sold a pane of glass for $341.25. Under traditional costing, that would result in a $107.75 loss per pane, while ABC prevents this by reflecting on true cost. Pricing and sales decisions are affected. If we sold auto glass at $341.25, we might assume we had a profit, because with traditional costing, we were showing a $262.50 cost per pane. However, we would actually be losing money because the detailed allocation shows a $449 cost. If we wanted a margin of a similar expected amount using ABC, we might actually price a pane of glass for auto glass at $583.70 to ensure the profitability we desire. Let's compute costs using ABC for S&H Cosmetics. We have 4 activity pools: special processing with $30,000 based on machine hours. Assembly has $60,000 of costs and is based on labor hours. Purchasing has $8,000 of cost and is driven by part numbers. Inspection has $2,000 of cost and is driven by the number of batches inspected. Your job is to compute cost per unit for shimmer lip gloss and smoky eyeshadow using activity-based pools. This will require computing the ABC overhead rate for each pool and then applying overhead based on product usage. Pause here and work through the activity. Once you've finished, check your answers with the solution provided in the back of Chapter 5. Now compare the results of traditional costing versus ABC for S&H Cosmetics. The traditional costing results show lip gloss costing $4.58. Whereas eyeshadow is $2.67. The ABC results show a cost of $3.92 versus $4.32. This comparison shows the core value of ABC. Traditional costing overcosted the lip gloss, yet undercosted the eyeshadow. That means if the company priced products using traditional costing, they may lose money on eyeshadow without realizing it. This can lead to incorrect pricing and poor product strategy decisions. Pause here and work your way through the activity, and once you've finished, check your answers with the solutions provided in the back of Chapter 5.